Have you ever woken up and felt the weight of the world settle on your chest before your feet even touch the floor? The fears, the unknowns, the quiet dread of another day filled with questions that have no answers. We all have mornings like that, moments when we glance toward the horizon of our day and see only shadows. But Psalm 121 begins with a powerful question. I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? It's not just the cry of a weary traveler. It's the echo of every human soul searching for assurance in a world that constantly shifts beneath our feet. In a time when self-help dominates, and we're taught to look inward for strength, this psalm invites us to lift our eyes higher to a source of help that is not limited by our emotions, circumstances, or strength. This morning is not just another day on the calendar, it's an opportunity to renew our trust in the One who never sleeps, who never forgets, and who has promised to keep our life, every moment, every step, every breath. So as we begin today, let us shift our gaze upward and remember where our true help comes from. Psalm 121 is often referred to as a song of ascents, one of several psalms recited by Jewish pilgrims as they journeyed upward toward Jerusalem for annual festivals. The very structure of this psalm is filled with movement, ascent, and anticipation, not just geographically, but spiritually. In those times, traveling to Jerusalem was not merely a matter of logistics. It was a pilgrimage of the soul. Each step taken was an act of devotion. Every hill climbed was a reminder of both effort and dependence. As the traveler lifted his eyes toward the mountains that surrounded Jerusalem, he would have been reminded of danger, uncertainty, fatigue, and perhaps even the looming threat of enemies or natural challenges. Yet in the same breath, that upward glance triggered a greater realization. His help would not come from the hills themselves. This distinction is crucial. The mountains were symbols of permanence and strength in the ancient world, much like technology, wealth, or influence are in ours. But Psalm 121 draws a line between creation and creator, between what is visible and what is ultimate. The hills may inspire awe, but they are not where salvation lies. The maker of heaven and earth, he is the source of true help. This simple shift in focus is transformative. It moves the heart from fear to faith, from self-reliance to divine dependence. The psalmist isn't looking inward or even outward to others for support. He's looking upward. This upward orientation reminds us that trust is not passive. It's not blind optimism. It's a conscious decision to look beyond the temporal and temporary. The pilgrim may be weary, the path may be steep, but the one who walks with trust in the Lord walks with assurance that he is not alone. There's deep comfort in knowing that the help we need does not have to be conjured or earned. It is available because it flows from a God who sees, knows, and cares. Even in our modern world, we are all on journeys of identity, purpose, recovery, faith. The roads are different. The enemy is subtler, the weariness more internalized, but the human cry remains the same. Where does my help come from? Psalm 121 offers an answer that transcends geography and time. It tells us that help is not a place, a program, or a person. It is a person beyond all others, the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He was the help of the pilgrim then. He is our help now. When the soul lifts its eyes above the crisis, above the noise, above the fear, and dares to trust again, it finds not just direction, but the very presence of God, who walks with his people every step of the way. The phrase, "my help comes from the Lord," stands in stark contrast to the default posture of the human heart, which so often leans towards self-reliance. In ancient times, mountains represented strength, stability, and often pagan worship sites. To lift one's eyes to the hills could have been a gesture of searching for protection in powerful places, or seeking spiritual strength from false gods whose altars dotted those elevations. But the psalmist does not stop at the hills. He lifts his eyes beyond them and deliberately declares that his help does not come from any created place or symbol of might. It comes from the Lord, not merely a deity, but the creator of heaven and earth. This shift in focus is both theological and existential. It draws a clear line between misplaced trust and rightly ordered faith. In the modern world, this same principle persists. We look to our own mountains. Careers, relationships, financial security, medical advancement, education, all good and valuable in their own right, yet none of them ultimately able to carry the full weight of our need. When life becomes uncertain, when storms threaten the foundations we've built, it becomes apparent how fragile even our strongest human systems are. It is in these moments that Psalm 121 confronts us with a sobering reality. No matter how high the hill, it cannot save us. No matter how strong the structure, it cannot hold us eternally. The psalmist's words become not just a statement of belief, but a rebuke of idolatry. They cut through the illusion that we are self-sufficient, and they remind us that the help we most need, sustaining, soul-deep, enduring help, is divine. There is something profound in the act of looking up. It is a posture of humility. To look up is to acknowledge that the answers are not found at our feet or within our minds alone. It is a turning of the heart towards something greater, someone higher. It is the recognition that no matter how capable we are not ultimate. The psalmist offers us more than a poetic line. He offers us a lifeline, a reorientation of our trust. In a world that urges us to depend on what we can see, control, or build, this verse calls us to look to the invisible, to the eternal, to the one who made what we see and governs what we cannot. When the psalmist says, "My help comes from the Lord," he is not reciting a creed. He's making a personal confession. He's choosing trust over fear, faith over circumstance. And in doing so, he teaches us that trusting God is not weakness, but wisdom. It is not retreat, but recognition that the Creator who shaped the universe is also deeply committed to helping, holding, and guiding the individual soul who looks to Him. The statement that God will not slumber or sleep carries a depth of reassurance that transcends poetic imagery. In the ancient world, and even in our present age, one of the greatest fears people face is abandonment. The fear that no one is watching, no one cares, or worse, that the very one in whom we trust might forget or fail us. Psalm 121 directly counters that fear by describing a God who is perpetually awake, perpetually attentive, and perpetually involved. Human beings, no matter how loving or well-meaning, must sleep. Even the most devoted guardian, parent, or leader is bound by fatigue. Sleep is the body's reminder of limitation. But the psalmist lifts our gaze to a different kind of protector, one who is not limited by weariness, not subject to distraction, not vulnerable to forgetfulness. The beauty of this promise is found in its intimate application. God does not merely stay awake in a vague, distant sense. He is watchful over you, not just over nations, not only over history, but over your very life. There is no hour in the night when His eyes turn away. There is no moment of danger, sorrow, confusion, or fatigue where He blinks. This unceasing watchfulness is a direct answer to the silent question many hearts ask in the dark. Is anyone there? Does anyone see me? Does anyone care? Psalm 121 answers with unwavering certainty. The Lord is your keeper, and He does not sleep This image of divine vigilance is especially powerful when contrasted with ancient religious traditions in which gods were believed to rest, to become angry and inaccessible, or to require appeasement before they could be engaged. Even in modern secular thought, where people often place their trust in systems, luck, or unseen forces, there is no guarantee of care. Systems crash, fortune turns, forces shift. But the psalmist describes a completely different kind of relationship. Not with an unpredictable force, but with a personal, faithful God whose awareness of your life never pauses. This has enormous implications for how we live. It means we are never truly alone. It means we do not carry our burdens into the night with no one to share them. It means that when the world sleeps and our fears are most alive, God is fully awake. This awareness creates the foundation for peace, not because trouble will never come, but because we are never unguarded. Our protection is not dependent on our strength or our ability to remain vigilant. It rests on the unblinking, unfailing eyes of a God who does not rest. To know that God never slumbers is to know that we can. We can rest because He doesn't. We can trust because He sees what we cannot. And we can move forward each day with a quiet confidence that someone far greater, far wiser, and infinitely more loving is already watching every step we take. Psalm 121 presents a vision of divine protection that is not partial or momentary, but complete and enduring. When the psalmist speaks of the Lord as the one who will keep you from all harm and will keep your life, he's not offering a simplistic promise of ease. Rather, he is drawing attention to the all-encompassing nature of God's care. The Hebrew word translated as keep or guard appears repeatedly, emphasizing a theme of continual, active preservation. This keeping is not limited to physical safety, though it certainly includes that. It reaches further into the emotional, spiritual, and eternal dimensions of human life. It is not just about surviving danger, but about being sustained through it, shaped by it, and kept whole in spite of it. This holistic view of divine protection pushes us to rethink what it means for God to help us. Often people interpret protection as the absence of trouble, but Psalm 121 challenges that notion. The text doesn't say that nothing difficult will ever happen. It doesn't suggest a shield that deflects every discomfort or sorrow. Instead, it assures the reader that no evil will overcome them, no circumstance will separate them from God's presence, and no season of trial will have the final word. The protection God offers is not merely circumstantial, but personal. It is His presence that guards us, not just from what is outside, but from what could grow inside. Fear, bitterness, despair. He guards not just the body, but the soul. The psalmist's words are a reminder that protection is not always seen in the moment. There are times when we are kept from things we never knew were threatening us. There are other times when we walk through hardship, but later see how we were held together in the midst of it. The keeping of God is often quiet, unseen, and yet powerful. It is the peace that steadies the heart in chaos. It is the strength to forgive when wounded. It is the ability to keep hoping when all signs suggest otherwise. This kind of protection does not wear out. It is not dependent on how strong we feel or how perfectly we behave. The Psalm says that God will keep your life, which means the very essence of who you are is under His care. And this keeping is not a one-time event, but a continuous reality. He watches over your coming and going, every transition, every movement, every season. He is not just present in the high moments of praise or the desperate cries for help. He is with you in the ordinary days, the silent struggles, the decisions made in solitude. His protection is not a promise that life will be easy, but that it will be covered. He will keep you entirely, faithfully, always. That is the kind of protection Psalm 121 invites us to trust. Psalm 121 offers a profound reminder that God's care is not limited to a specific moment or place, but extends across the entire journey of life. When the psalmist declares that the Lord will watch over your coming and going, he touches on something deeply human: the vulnerability we feel during transitions, whether it is the literal act of traveling from one place to another, or the metaphorical transitions we all go through. Seasons of change, new beginnings, unexpected losses, or uncertain futures. These are the moments where anxiety often takes hold. The psalm does not ignore that reality. Instead, it places those very transitions under divine watchfulness. It tells us that from the first step to the last, from the rising of the sun to its setting, God is fully present. The mention of your coming and going is a way of encompassing all human activity. It is a poetic expression of totality. There is no moment too small, no detail too ordinary that falls outside the scope of God's attention. Many people live with the sense that God is only interested in the dramatic, the crisis, the miracle, the act of worship. But the psalmist paints a different picture. God is not absent in the daily rhythms of life. He is involved in the mundane, the routine, the unnoticed. He watches as you rise in the morning, as you head to work, as you speak with your family, as you rest. The very movements you consider insignificant are seen by Him and fall within the boundaries of His protection. The beauty of this promise lies also in its temporal dimension. The psalmist says that God will watch over your coming and going both now and forevermore. It is a sweeping affirmation that divine care is not seasonal or dependent on circumstances. It is not reserved for youth and strength or for the moments when faith is strong. It stretches across time, into our future, and even into eternity. This gives the believer an anchoring hope. Life is filled with change, and human plans are often fragile, but the presence of God is constant. He is not only present where you are, but also where you are going. In the ancient context, travel involved danger. Roads were unsafe, and the night brought many risks. The psalmist was reassuring pilgrims that their movements, every step, were under the care of a faithful God. In the same way, modern life presents its own form of unknowns. We do not know what tomorrow holds, what news a phone call might bring, or what a decision may set in motion. But we are not walking blind. The God who kept the pilgrims of old is still keeping His people today. He watches over every exit and every return. The road may not always be smooth, but the companion is unchanging. That is the assurance that makes each journey bearable. Not the absence of uncertainty, but the presence of God in the midst of it. The final verse of Psalm 121 shifts the reader from the poetic assurance of God's power to a deeply personal invitation to trust God not just in times of crisis, but in the ordinary beginning of each day. Trust in the morning becomes more than a theological idea. It becomes a spiritual discipline. Mourning by nature is symbolic. It represents not just a new day, but a new chance, a restart after rest, a moment of clarity before the noise begins. How we begin our mornings often determines how we carry ourselves throughout the day. Psalm 121, with its rich language of divine help and protection, offers the believer a framework to start the day not with anxiety or control, but with surrender and confidence in the character of God. Trust is not an emotion we conjure at will. It must be cultivated. And like any habit of the soul, it grows through intentional repetition. To wake up and repeat the truth that my help comes from the Lord is to draw a line between what the world demands of you and what God has promised to you. It is to confront fear with faith before it takes root. Morning trust is not passive. It requires a conscious turning of the heart toward the one who does not sleep, who does not abandon, who does not fail. While the world shouts about productivity, control, and anxiety-driven urgency, Psalm 121 invites the soul to remember that before you act, God is already active. This kind of morning posture reshapes not just individual peace, but daily choices. When one begins with trust, decisions are no longer ruled by fear, responses are no longer dictated by insecurity, even interruptions become opportunities to rely more deeply on God's sustaining presence. By trusting God at the start of the day, the believer aligns their inner world with eternal truth, that the same God who watches over the cosmos watches over each moment of their life. In this way, morning prayer, rooted in Psalm 121, is not just devotional, it is transformational. It is where the anxious heart is calmed, where the weary spirit is lifted, and where the uncertain future is placed back into the hands of a faithful God. It becomes a daily return to the spiritual logic that the world cannot offer. That help is not earned, manufactured, or predicted. It is given by grace. It flows from the one who made heaven and earth. And to trust that at the break of each new day is to live in step with the deepest truths of Scripture. It reminds us that before we step into the unknown, we have already been seen, known, and kept by a God who goes before us and remains with us morning after morning without fail. As we bring this reflection on Psalm 121 to a close, we are reminded that the journey of life is not without its hills, valleys, and unseen turns. There will be days when the road feels uncertain, when the weight of fear presses in, and when the night seems long. But this psalm anchors us in a truth that transcends time and circumstance. Our help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He does not slumber. He does not grow weary. He does not abandon. He watches over our coming and going, not just today, but forevermore. His protection is not partial, but whole. His attention is not seasonal, but constant. And His presence is not a distant comfort. It is a present strength. So as you rise each morning, and as you walk through the moments of each day, lift your eyes, not in despair, but in faith. Look beyond the temporary, beyond the visible, and set your gaze on the one who holds your life in His hands. This is not blind hope, it is anchored trust, a trust that whispers peace in the storm and strength in the climb. For the Lord is your keeper, now and always.